Imagine this. You pay for your only son's wedding. You give him everything you have, every last dollar, thinking it's an act of love. But then on the very day of the wedding, in front of hundreds of people, his bride looks you in the eye and screams, "You were uninvited." That happened to me. And instead of arguing, instead of crying, I smiled because I had brought a guest who carried Rebecca's darkest secret. And when she saw him, she turned pale, screamed, and fainted on the spot. Asterisk, pause, whispery suspense. But before I tell you everything, let me ask you, if you were me, what would you have done? Would you expose the truth, even if it meant destroying the wedding? Or would you stay quiet and let your son marry a liar? Stick with me till the end, and then you can decide, am I the A*** hole? And hey, if you love stories about family drama, betrayal, and a little bit of revenge, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who loves a juicy twist. I'm 68 years old, a retired school principal. I lost my wife, Linda, 10 years ago to cancer. Since then, my world has revolved around one person, my son, Daniel. When you lose your partner, life feels like someone turned off all the lights. But Daniel, he kept me going. I thought, at least I have him. At least I can still give him the life his mother wanted for him. And I gave him everything. When Daniel wanted to go to college out of state, I worked extra hours tutoring kids just to afford his tuition. When he wanted a car in his 20s, I sold my late wife's jewelry to help him. When he racked up credit card debt, I covered it. Because that's what parents do, right? We sacrifice, we give, we love. So when Daniel came home one day, smiling ear to ear, saying, "Dad, I've met someone. Her name's Rebecca. She's amazing," I felt my heart swell. Finally, my son had found love. And when he said, "Dad, I think I'm going to marry her," I almost cried tears of joy. I first met Rebecca at dinner. She was stunning, tall, blonde, with the kind of smile that could charm an entire room. But there was something about her eyes. Cold, calculating. Still, I brushed it off. Maybe I was being too protective. At dinner, she dominated the conversation, talking about herself, her career, her expensive tastes. She barely asked me a question. But Daniel looked at her like she hung the moon. So I stayed quiet. When the wedding planning started, I offered to help financially. Not just help, pay for it entirely. My wife and I had saved for decades, planning for retirement. But I thought, what's the point of money if not to use it for family? Rebecca accepted my offer with a wide smile. "Oh, thank you, Mr. James. You're just the sweetest." But the sweetness ended there. From day one, Rebecca made it clear. I was a checkbook, not family. When I suggested a few family traditions, like displaying Linda's photo at the altar, Rebecca scoffed. "This is our wedding, not a memorial service." When I asked about seating arrangements, she said, "Don't worry, James. We'll put you somewhere comfortable." Somewhere comfortable turned out to be the back. At the rehearsal dinner, Rebecca's family sat in the best seats while I was shoved near the kitchen doors. When I brought up to Daniel, he mumbled, "Dad, don't make this a big deal. Rebecca just wants her family close." Her family, who hadn't spent a dime, sat front and center. Me, I was funding the whole thing, but being treated like an afterthought. The final straw came when I overheard Rebecca talking to one of her bridesmaids. "I wish Daniel's dad wouldn't hover so much. He's old, lonely, and honestly, kind of embarrassing. But hey, at least he's paying for the circus." Those words cut deeper than any knife. The night before the wedding, Daniel came to me. He looked uncomfortable. "Dad, Rebecca feels, well, she feels like you're making things about yourself. She thinks maybe it's better if you don't come to the ceremony." I stared at him, my own son, as if I didn't recognize him. "Daniel, I paid for the wedding. I raised you alone. And you're telling me I'm not invited?" He avoided my eyes. "It's just," Rebecca stressed, "don't take it personally." "Don't take it personally?" My hands shook. My heart pounded. But I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I smiled, because right then I knew Rebecca had no idea what was coming. Weeks before the wedding, I had done my own digging. Call it father's intuition, call it paranoia, but something about Rebecca didn't sit right with me. So I hired an old colleague, retired now, but once the best private investigator in town. What he found nearly made me fall out of my chair. Rebecca had been engaged before, to a man named Michael. She left him abruptly 2 years ago. No explanation, no closure. Why? Because she was already seeing my son. But that wasn't the worst part. Michael had evidence, texts, emails, even a video, of Rebecca bragging to her friends about her plans. One message read, "Daniel's loaded. I'll marry him. Play the sweet wife for a year, then file for divorce. Easy money." When I read those words, I felt sick. But instead of confronting Daniel, who was blinded by love, I made a plan. I called Michael, and I invited him to the wedding. Not as a guest, but as my guest. The day came. The church was decorated with white roses, chandeliers glittered, and the guests buzzed with excitement. I walked in quietly, Michael by my side. No one knew who he was. He blended in, sitting calmly in the corner. As the ceremony began, I held my breath. My son stood at the altar, smiling nervously. Rebecca walked in, radiant in her gown, her arm hooked through her father's. And then, just as the vows were about to begin, Rebecca spotted me. Her eyes narrowed, her face twisted. She marched straight toward me, her heels clicking like gunshots. "You were uninvited," she hissed, her voice echoing through the church. The room went silent. Guests turned. Phones lifted, recording. "Didn't Daniel tell you? We don't want you here. Leave." Gasps filled the air. I didn't flinch. I didn't shout. I smiled. "Don't worry, Rebecca, I'll leave soon. But first, I'd like you to meet my guest." Her face drained of color. Her eyes darted across the room and landed on Michael. The bouquet slipped from her hands. "No, no, no, no," she whispered, backing away. The guests looked confused. Daniel looked alarmed. And then Rebecca fainted. The room erupted into chaos. Rebecca lay on the floor, fainted. Her bridesmaids rushed to fan her. Her mother shouted for water. And the priest looked like he wanted to disappear behind the altar. Daniel turned to me, his face crimson with fury. "Dad, what the hell did you do?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even stand up. "Nothing, son. I just brought a guest. Maybe you should ask your bride why she's so terrified of him." Daniel spun toward Michael, who had risen calmly from his seat. "And who are you?" Daniel demanded. Michael's voice was steady. "I'm Michael. I used to be Rebecca's fiancé, until she left me for you." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Daniel's jaw dropped. That's not true." Michael shook his head, pulled out his phone, and tapped the screen. "I didn't want to do this here, Daniel, but you deserve to know the truth." The audio began to play. Rebecca's voice, clear as day. "Daniel's loaded. I'll marry him, play the sweet wife for a year, then divorce and walk away rich. Honestly, I can't wait to get my hands on his money." The room fell silent. So silent you could hear a pin drop. Daniel's face went white. He staggered back a step, then another, like someone had punched him in the chest. "No, no, she wouldn't say that," he muttered. Michael spoke softly, almost pitying. "She did. And she cheated on me with you while we were engaged. I don't blame you. You didn't know. But I couldn't sit here and watch her trap you too." All eyes turned to Rebecca, who had woken up by now, clutching her chest, eyes darting wildly. That's not me. That's fake," she shrieked. But then Michael held up his phone again, scrolling through text after text. Screenshots projected on a screen by a tech-savvy cousin who decided the world needed to see this drama in 4K. There it was, line after line of Rebecca's words. "Daniel's dad is pathetic, but loaded. Once he's gone, Daniel inherits everything. Easy money. Marriage is just a contract. A year of acting sweet, then I'll cash out." Rebecca's own words, her own voice, her own scheme laid bare. Daniel collapsed into a chair, his hands shaking. "Dad, is this real?" I looked at him, my heart breaking. "Son, I didn't want you to find out like this. But I couldn't stand by and watch you destroy your life. I tried to warn you. You wouldn't listen. Rebecca lunged toward him, tears streaming down her face. Baby, it's not true. They're lying. Your father just wants to ruin us. Daniel shoved her away. Enough, Rebecca. Enough. I heard your voice. I read your words. Was I just your ticket to money? Was any of it real? Rebecca's tears turned cold. Her expression hardened. You know what? Fine. Yes, I said those things. Because I was scared, okay? Scared of being poor. Scared of having nothing. But I love you, Daniel, I really do. It was too late. The guests were whispering, some recording, some outright laughing. The bride, who had strutted in like a queen, was now exposed as a fraud. Daniel buried his face in his hands. And me? I just sat there, silent, watching the truth do what I couldn't. The wedding collapsed, literally. The priest quietly excused himself. The band stopped playing. Half the guests left, shaking their heads. Rebecca's parents screamed at Michael, calling him a liar, but he stood his ground. Her father even tried to lunge at me, shouting, "This is your fault. You ruined everything." I stood tall. No, Rebecca ruined everything. By lying, by scheming, by using my son. Security ended up escorting Rebecca and her family out of the venue. Daniel stayed behind, slumped in a chair, broken. Guests patted his shoulder awkwardly before leaving. In the end, it was just me and him. He didn't speak for a long time. Finally, he looked up at me, eyes red and hollow. "Dad, why didn't you tell me sooner?" My throat tightened. "Because you wouldn't have believed me. You had to see it yourself." He nodded slowly, tears dripping onto his hands. And for the first time in years, he leaned into me like the little boy he used to be and whispered, "I'm sorry, Dad." The weeks after the wedding were brutal. The story spread across town like wildfire. Guests couldn't resist gossiping. Social media lit up with whispers of the bride who fainted at her own wedding. Rebecca tried to spin it. Of course, claimed Michael had faked everything. Claimed I had manipulated the whole thing out of jealousy. But the evidence was too strong. Her reputation was ruined. She moved out of town, tail between her legs. Daniel stayed with me for a while, quiet, broken, ashamed. But slowly, he began to heal. And me? I sat in the quiet of my house, wondering if I'd done the right thing. So here's where I leave the question to you. Was I wrong? Should I have stayed quiet, let the wedding happen, and watch my son walk straight into a trap? Or was I right to expose the truth, even if it meant humiliating him in front of everyone he knew? I know some people think I'm cruel, that I should have protected him from that kind of public pain. But others say I save him, that sometimes the only way to open someone's eyes is with shock. So what do you think? Am I the *** hole for ruining my son's wedding? Or was I the only one brave enough to do what needed to be done? If you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Comment below. I read every single one. And if you enjoyed the story of betrayal, secrets, and a little sweet revenge, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and share this video with someone who loves a good family drama. Because trust me, I have plenty more where this came from. Until next time, be careful who you trust, because sometimes the person smiling at you has the sharpest knife.